Joining me now is the Acting Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. Ken, thanks so much for joining us. I do have to ask you, who is the president talking about in this tweet when he says that these individuals, Democratic congresswomen, progressives, need to go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Do you have any idea who he's talking about here?
I don't.
Okay, because, Ocasio-Cortez was born in New York, Presley was born in Ohio, Tlaib was born in Michigan.
Well, New York could use a little fixing today, but
that's a separate...
You talked to the mayor about that already.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you're bound by the Hatch Act. You're supposed to talk policy and not really politics, but you understand that you heard de Blasio talking about how the president likes to divide people on race and religion and nationality. And these ICE raids now come, and the president is talking about sending these Democratic congresswomen back to the countries they came from, where 3 out of 4 of the members of the so-called squad come from the United States. It feeds into this impression that the president is racist and is pushing a racist agenda, even if that's not.
I mean, he's running for president, and you're wrapping up his rhetoric for the presidential race in with what is ICE's everyday job, and that's enforcing the law Congress passed. So we're paying attention to it from a news standpoint, but this is their job every day. We've got compassionate, loyal ICE agents who are just doing their job, and it shows you how far we've fallen in that it's become news that they would actually go deport people who have removal orders. And in your earlier segment, CNN had a little tagline underneath the mayor that said undocumented. Well, they're not undocumented. They've got a court order on a piece of paper, federal order that says they've gotten due process, and over 1 million people with removal orders.
Well, let's talk about this.
Yeah, well, that ICE is drawing from.
So, first of all, have the raids started?
I can't speak to operational specifics and won't, but that's the pool that's being drawn from for ICE.
So the president said the raids were going to start today.
I understand that, but he's also made it clear that he's leaving actual execution in the hands of Matt Albence and the folks at ICE who do this job every day.
Okay, so then the other question is, who is going to be targeted? Because obviously, I don't think there's anybody that really would object to dangerous criminals, MS-13.
Well, let's start there.
Yeah.
That remains the priority for ICE. That is still
when they go out today, that's who they're going to go after.
That's still the priority. What we keep saying.
Today it's a priority?
Let me finish, Jake.
Yeah.
What we keep saying is that will not be the exclusive limit of any operation. That is the priority. You can expect it to remain the priority. And it's interesting to hear a mayor of a major city, America's biggest, say, well, this is what I'd like to see done. Well, at the same time, people in his city and others who want to be sanctuary cities are not cooperating with that exact effort. That's still ICE's priority. And ICE is protecting Americans by removing those criminals from this country, while you've got sanctuary cities and states who are protecting these criminals by not cooperating with ICE.
When you talk about criminals, I guess that's one of the things. I don't think anybody has any issue with dangerous criminals, MS-13 gang members, people who have killed people or raped people. Get them out of the country. You heard de Blasio say that.
But that isn't even right. We're sitting here at the Capitol of the United States. Barely a month ago, MS-13 killed a 14-year-old girl on the other side of the border in Maryland, and the killer and the 2 accomplices had been in Prince George's County police detention for violent crimes, aggravated felonies, and Maryland, their Attorney General, and the Prince George's County government proudly proclaimed they were providing sanctuary for those folks. And now there's a 14-year-old girl dead. And that is MS-13.
It's a horrible tragedy.
And they wouldn't cooperate with ICE.
So let's talk about today, because my point is, when you say criminals need to be deported, I think a lot of people think dangerous criminals when they hear criminal, like the kind you just talked about from Maryland. But you also mean people who are in this country illegally when you say criminals, right?
When we talk in terms of, so everybody understands, coming across the border illegally is a crime.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's the confusion you're trying to clear up. When we talk about prioritization for removal, we're not utilizing that. We're using other crimes that you would normally think of. Yes.
Okay. So you said earlier this month that if people know the raids are coming, that would be, quote, a threat to officer safety. And I know there are people at ICE who are concerned about that. But President Trump has not only named that named the date that these raids are coming, he's talked about it happening this morning. Is there concern that being so public about when these raids are happening, announcing them the way that President Trump has, will put ICE officers in jeopardy?
Well, first of all, if you look back to the last time we were talking about this about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The level of detail in the information that came out publicly was way beyond these general comments the president is making. And it's when you get to that point where you've got to be concerned for officer safety, which is always a top priority, and as you might imagine, in any effort like this.
So what do you say to people like de Blasio who say, this looks like a political stunt, not like an actual effort to solve the immigration problem, because you have the president talking about it. Obviously,
Sure.
This is something that he's talked about on the campaign trail since he announced his presidential
Right.
run. This is red meat for the red states to get his base up.
Well,
this isn't about keeping the community safer.
It is about keeping the community safer, and he did talk about it during his presidential campaign. And what happened? Just the expectations imposed such a deterrent effect that we saw what is now called the Trump effect, the major drop in illegal crossings that we saw in 2017, when people in other parts of the world realized that judges were going to interfere with this president's policies and he wasn't necessarily going to get cooperation from Congress. The numbers started going back up. We were hitting crisis level starting last year. Department of Homeland Security was warning about this, while lots of people in this government were saying it's a manufactured crisis, it isn't real. Well, those people are now coming to the border and realizing we do have a real crisis. The Border Patrol is strapped. ICE is strapped.
Sure.
Even HHS.
There is a crisis,
strapped.
absolutely. Humanitarian crisis at the border. Acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan reportedly did not support these raids because undocumented parents could be separated from their children. Can you guarantee that no parents will be separated from their children, excluding the violent criminals that we're talking about earlier? Can you guarantee that no parents will be separating from their children in these raids?
In the same way I wasn't willing to talk about operational details, that would be an operational detail that I'm not going to comment on. There are 1 million people, including families, with removal orders. The priority remains for ICE to get at criminals. And we're not talking about violent criminals, right, aggravated felons, all those sorts of things, just as it was in the Obama administration. And you noted earlier in this show that the Trump administration has still not hit the pace of the Obama administration in deportations. So
how is separating families and how is pledging that parents will not be separated from their children, which is something that I think shocked a lot of people when it happened last year before you came on board? How is pledging that won't happen, or saying we're making every effort to make sure that doesn't happen again? How is that revealing any sort of operational?
Well, I'm not going to say yes or no to anything like that, because then certain people out there can write themselves off the list or find a way to play a loophole. And the loopholes in our legal system are what we've been screaming to be fixed. I run asylum with USCIS. That's one of the things we do, along with legal immigration. We're blessed to be able to do that. And we have been talking to Congress for quite some time about closing some of these loopholes, including ones that the Obama administration talked to them about, like keeping families together with the Flores settlement and undoing that. We have the same position the Obama administration did on dealing with trafficked children. I can put that legislation for those two fixes, Jake, on one piece of paper. One piece of paper, not a 1,000-page bill. And when I see the House calendar come out between now and when they go on vacation, and the only thing about this they have is some show hearings, they're not going to deal with the problems on a legislative level, I know they're leaving it to us.
So I want to ask you, because the vice president toured the border, a detention facility, on Friday. He saw the dangerous overcrowding firsthand. Hundreds of men packed into facilities. They don't have room to lie down. They're asking for water. The smell was overwhelming. The vice president said these conditions were not acceptable.
Right.
The acting DHS Inspector General on Friday said the department is not taking sufficient steps to address the overcrowding and prolonged detention. Isn't this a shame? Isn't this a blight on the United States government that we are treating, because I'm a taxpayer,
I understand.
but we are treating people this way?
First of all, it is shameful for Congress. And the reason is, and we can prove it, because last month, when they were willing to address this same problem for children, we succeeded in addressing it, Jake, in 1 month. 1 month. Back in February, the Trump administration asked for more ICE detention beds. The reason you see overcrowding at Border Patrol facilities, and your viewers should pay attention to this, is not because of the Border Patrol. Their job is catch, process, And then they hand them off to ICE.
Right.
Well, ICE is overcrowded. The pipeline is clogged farther down the pipe. That's why you're seeing these pictures at the border. I was at the same sector of the border 2 weeks ago. These facilities were built to catch adult Mexican males, process them and return them to Mexico, typically on the same day. When I was down there, I saw children, frankly, well cared for, but in space clearly not designed for that. So the Border Patrol in the El Paso sector is not only dealing with those numbers, but if you just go back to last October, they were in the number 6 sector on the border. Now they're number 2. So we get all sorts of problems that they're contending with at the same time
I guess
without congressional help.